Shut up, compressor. What's up, everybody? Matt here with Dukes Models, and welcome to episode 4 of the big old Intruder build. So the first 3 episodes have been all about kind of getting the suck out of the way, cutting up for the intakes, filling the fuselage rivets, filling the wing rivets, getting the wings together, all that sort of stuff. Well, we still have a bit more suck to get through. And in this episode, we're going to be playing with, first of all, the Radome. Now, the way that Trumpeter would have you do this is a bit ridiculous. So first of all, let's go ahead and drop the... So the way the kit goes together, you've got the fuselage halves, right? You've got this sort of centerpiece. This thing, once it fits really well, but getting it to fit... first time can drive you crazy. Okay, so basically like that. So it's got these pins that it sits on. There's one there, there's one back here, there's this bulkhead back here, and it kind of sits on all those and matches up against the fuselage down here. And you've got the forward edge of the gear bay right up there, right? And so it basically all goes together this way. And then what Trumpeter would have you do, just lock it in just a little bit, is basically take the Radome, stick it together, and then just at the end of the very end of the build, just take it and kind of yank it on there. Now, this is something that I've experienced on the 148th kit, and a lot of people have experienced on the 132nd kit, is that yeah, it's a bit floppy right now, but it tightens up as you build it. But essentially, once you get to the end of the build and you put the bulkhead in here that houses the radar and all that, and then you go to put on the Radome, you have steps on either side. And by that point, you've got the intakes installed, you've got all kinds of shit around here, and so it's really tough to get in here and sand, and you're erasing some detail and things like that. Huge pain in the ass. I personally experienced that on the 148th, and it's basically the exact same engineering, and it's the exact same giant pain in the ass. Well, screw that. Instead, my plan is to join the Radome halves to the fuselage halves. So, sorry, this fuselage is big and ungainly. So basically, like so. And by doing this, yeah, there might be like a centerline seam on the Radome once it all gets joined up, and I might have to fill some stuff there. But I won't have to fill along the sides. And the sides are where the detail is. The sides are where things can get fucked up pretty bad. And the centerline, it's easy enough just to go in there and if I need to use miles of putty to do it, I can clean it up that way. However, the big problem with that is looking inside here, you basically have this little ridge that is meant to house that bulkhead assembly. And you have a ridge here that's kind of meant to meet the outside edge of it and line up and all that. And without it, it's just a butt joint, which is problematic, to say the least. So, 2 questions arise from that. First of all, can we put something here that can provide a little bit of support so we actually have like a ledge that we're working with? And second, do I even need to install that bulkhead right here? Well, I thought for a minute that I might, because the A-6Es have that little chin ball for the FLIR, and I thought that attached to that bulkhead because, as you can see, there's a big gaping hole here for the sort of chin piece. But as I was looking at it in the instructions, you can see it right here. There's the ball thing and all that stuff. It goes right into there, which from here looks like it's all part of the bulkhead, right? Wrong. It's actually the forward edge of the nose gear bay, which is right here. So I don't have to worry about anything except maybe installing that piece beforehand. And it looks like we've got some little space here to kind of slot it in and make sure that everything's all happy. So, cool. The second part, if we can skip that bulkhead and we just don't have to worry about it at all, and it's meaningless to everything that we're trying to do, then what can we install here to make everything happy with the radome and the way that it fits? So we take some tape and kind of sort of barely lock that down. I need to clean up the whole area right off the bench here. Then we can take this little thin strip of styrene, basically lay it right in here. It's actually, like, I shit you not, it is the perfect width. All the way along there. And then we take another strip. Well, maybe, I don't know if we would have get up here. That might be a different story. Anyway, we can cut this and we can install this in here and maybe even cut it up in a couple of different pieces and just give us something for the two parts to have some teeth with and make make alignment easier and make for a stronger join. Now, the last thing I want to do is make a big old mess by spooging out to me extra thin all over that kind of area there. So instead of just doing one big old chunk, I think I'm going to take a couple of pieces. And now it's moment of truth time. We've got these various little strips of styrene glued in here along the side. They follow this channel for the bulkhead and also up here. And then this one on top is basically to sort of help with the vertical placement, because if you look at this piece, there's a lot of flex. And so we want to make sure that everything lines up there. But what I'm planning to do is nail this side area first, and then we'll work on up top. Set this nice and flat. And then look at that. That's pretty damn good. Look at that. Nice. Okay, it's time for the next moment of truth. Gluing in the port radome half. All right. While we're waiting, let's go ahead and start working on this upper join here. Once the radome halves set, I went ahead and did a quick test fit of the whole fuselage with this center spine element installed, roughly installed. It's got a little jankiness right here that needs to be addressed, but for the most part, it's where it needs to be. You can see it's got these little pins right here, sort of on the inside of the gear bays that lock into it and hold it in place. And up here, the forward edge of the gear bay very neatly sits in this spot where the bottom of the bulkhead would be. And I actually had to remove a little tiny bit of those plastic shims, or plastic ledges that I put in there, just so that would fit. And then the underside piece that has the FLIR chin ball will fit right in there. And then the nose itself, I can see how coming at this with a single piece radome and the fuselage could present a lot of problems, especially given that fucking gap. But because this is all one, this is the center line, it's easily accessible, it's way out in front. When it comes time to close these up and deal with cleanup, that's as easy as shimming that with some styrene to fill it. Then maybe a little bit of putty on top, maybe some stretch sprue down here where it gets narrow to fill. But working on a center line is easy as hell compared to trying to get into these little side areas once the intakes are down. That said, I still need to sand these because we got a little bit of the glue leaking out. So that is that. I think we can call the radome halves glued in place. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and get the fuselage brakes installed. These actually fit quite nicely. It's just a matter of making sure they sit flush to the surface. There's a very fine line here where they go in, and then when they suddenly sit too deep. Okay. So one side in. So one thing while I'm doing this that's going to be another fun task to deal with, we're going to have to wait a little bit on it, unfortunately, is this bottom piece where the FLIR turret sits. Basically fits into the fuselage two ways. So first of all, it's got this little, how fucking sturdy is that in there? So it's got this piece that kind of sits on top. In theory. Come on. So it sits on top like this, right? Got a little hole back here where it mounts to the forward edge of the gear bay. And you've got this little sort of U-shaped area where it fits into the radome. So this is pretty much plug and play. Especially when the thing comes apart. Okay, so you get the idea. Basically plug and play. It won't sit on there very well, but that's how it fits. Then when you get up here to the radome area, you can see this little lip in here. Basically it sits just like that. And then if we turn it around, ta-da! So I think we're going to need a little bit of filling in there, possibly, just to kind of blend it in. We might have to shim a little bit and rescribe up front there, or in the back, just depending on how it hits. It doesn't quite have the right depth. But that's for later. For now, we're still playing with these fuselage brakes. And one of the challenges is the lovely, friendly people at Trumpeter put sprue gates on the top and bottom, where they are just no fun to deal with. Because you have to ensure that they are nice and flush and all that kind of bullshit. Okay, there we go. Probably have to come back and sand that one little glue bomb I've got there, but that'll do nicely. Okay. What is next? We have a lot of different ways we can go now. So look, the next things we have are the cockpit, the front gear bay, the rudder, and the intakes. Cool. Well, first we're going to do this. There's one nifty thing about this kit is if you take the cockpit, be very gentle with this. Excuse me, seedy boys. Come out for a little while. So if you flip the cockpit over, it's got this pretty cool area right here, and it actually sits on this thing. So it's got a good amount of support, and this actually ends up helping to locate everything else too, because hey, when you have the cockpit in there and this thing with it, you got a nice good solid join going on. So removing that seam will probably help with a bit of a cleaner fit. And on the cockpit, I've still got to figure out if I want to keep what I've got going here, or if I want to try to break out and go crazy with my replacement one. I'm not gonna lie, it's a tough call. God damn it. Alright. Well, I gotta make a call somehow. Okay, so I've gone ahead and primed up a few things, including the inside of the intakes with some ammo one-shot white, which is basically white stynylrez res. I'm giving that 24 hours to do its sort of cure thing that it does. I've also gone ahead and sprayed up the nose gear bay, the sort of ceiling here, and the sidewalls. Again, giving it 24 hours to do its thing before we really start playing around. And so I figure now is as good a time as any to get into another level of suck, which is the ordnance. Now, it took me a while to figure out what loadout I wanted to do with the Intruder, because there are honestly so many damn options. But I like doing strange loadouts, and I like doing asymmetric loadouts and all that sort of stuff. And I finally found one that I think will be interesting. So let's go ahead and see what it is. Now, this is for the what was called the SUCAP mission, which is Surface Combat Air Patrol. Basically, it meant hunting the Iraqi Navy, which showed up and I guess tried to fire some missiles or something at Allied ships in the Persian Gulf. And Surface Cap had a couple of different interesting challenges. First, there was no guarantee that they would find a target, and they didn't want to drop a whole bunch of ordnance in the ocean to be light enough to land. So the loadout is pretty light compared to what the Intruder could actually carry. You know, you're not going to see MERS loaded out with half dozen snake eyes or things like that. They also couldn't use the Navy's main ship killer missile, the AGM-84 Harpoon, because in the Persian Gulf there were so many Allied ships, there was fear that the Harpoon was perhaps overkill and could potentially acquire an Allied ship as a target. And that's a hell of a incident of friendly fire. So I get why they did it, but still, it kind of sucks some of the wind out of my loadout sails, that's for sure. So, outside stations both had multiple ejector racks. And on the aft lower station, so this one right here, they carried rock eyes. Or I believe it's actually I think it's actually like a Mark 7 or something, but it's very similar to, it's the same Rockeye sort of casing thing. And so we have one of those on each aft outer station on the Mir. Nice and weird looking, huh? Then on the inner starboard station, we have the glorious duct tape and zip tie ship killing missile, the AGM-123 Skipper 2. Now, the Skipper 2 is an interesting weapon. So basically, it is a GBU-16, which is what's here. 1,000-pound laser-guided bomb. So basically, if you've seen the GBU-10, GBU-12, etc., it's similar to those. GBU-10 is the 2,000-pound bomb. GBU-16 here is a 1,000-pounder. So it's a Mark 83 bomb with the smart stuff on it. Now, the Skipper 2 is different in that it wasn't a bomb anymore because the Navy, or I think it was General Dynamics who designed it, bolted a Shrike motor to the back so it could fly for a while, basically, which turned it into an AGM instead of a GBU. So that makes it interesting in and of itself. It's got a freaking rocket motor stuck to the back of it. There's also an interesting thing about it, which is I guess because of that modification, they could not load these and fly around with them with the fins retracted, like they are here. They loaded them up with the fins extended. So, in addition to the whole shape of the laser-guided bomb type thing hanging around on the pylon, you also have fins kind of sticking up, like, apologize, way out of scale, but you have basically fins sticking up, doing their thing on the actual body of the bomb right here. So, a little bit different looking. Challenge on this is going to be making those fins sit in there. And the saving graces are, one, this resin has fairly chunky base fins for the 16. There's room to work with. They're not the paper thin type bullshit that you'd have to deal with in other things. The other nice thing is the fins, you can actually see them kind of sticking up right there. So I can get in there and I can cut those off and then maybe come in with, say, the JLC saw and start working out a groove, dig the groove out a bit more, and then probably get the silhouette out to cut some fins out of styrene. And there you go. That's my hope anyway. And this, I will say, this resin looks awesome. I mean, look at the navy coating on this. I mean, it's glorious. And it's well designed, like, cut off the plug, shrink it right into the tail. This piece just literally just falls onto this. The only thing I can maybe say is it's very wobbly, so this might be a matter for magnets. It might be a matter for putting a piece of wire in there, something like that, to help hold it a bit more securely. Because if I can get this holding at a good solid angle, I don't have to worry about lining the fins and all that kind of bullshit. So that's starboard side. Port side, again, Rockeye out back. On the inner station, this is where it gets fun. So apparently during Desert Storm, the 123s over here had problems with the propellant, and so they weren't the most reliable weapons. And because the Navy couldn't use harpoons, they had to figure out what else they could use. And I'm kind of honestly surprised they didn't load, like, Mavericks or something. I guess Mavericks are probably prioritized for ground targets. So there was the question of what the hell do they put on the Intruders to hunt ships with? And so they went with Zuni rockets. So I'm going to be putting an LAU-10, which is hiding somewhere in the house. I've got them for another build. I'm using the Edward 132nd resin ones. They're gorgeous looking. But basically, let's see, we can make the scriber be the stand in here. LAU-10, white canister thing with 4 rockets shoved into it, sitting on this wing. So basically we're going to have that loadout. And the reason that the loadout is so weird and so light is, again, so that the plane could fly around, look for ships. If it didn't fire anything, didn't drop anything, it could still land on the carrier without jettisoning ordnance. So, makes sense. The one thing I will say as a caveat is I don't actually have a photo showing an aircraft carrying this exact loadout. However, I have a photo from the starboard side showing the Rockeye and the GB or in the AGM 123. I actually have a couple photos showing that. Problem is they're shot from this side, from the starboard side, so you can't see what's going on the port side. And I also have photos showing the Intruder carrying Zuni pods. So it's entirely possible, and in my head it's completely, not even just possible, but highly plausible, that if you're having trouble with the 123s, but you're still taking one up, you're going to carry something else as a backup. So if this thing just sputters out and falls into the Gulf, you've still got something else you can shoot. And so I could very easily see during this time period, especially when you hear from veterans who were serving in the Gulf War, or sorry, Desert Storm, I guess I should be specific. One thing you hear over and over again with the aircraft, especially intruders, is basically they just put whatever they could find onto them. You had some specific mission loadouts, but it was like, yeah, sure, let's put harms on it. Why not? Especially over in like the Marine side on the ground, on the ground-based ones. So I figure some weird loadout like this, which is basically a slight twist on the standard SUCAP loadout, is entirely within the realm of possibility. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And first, we need to remove all the resin bullshit. So let's get to that. I'm sure this is highly exciting for everybody, so I'll probably cut this out a little bit early because we're not going to sit here and watch all this bullshit.